The old rocking chair creaked softly as the evening breeze swept across the porch. The children sitting at my feet leaned closer, waiting for another story. I smiled, but this time there was sadness in my eyes. "My dear children," I began, "people think the most dangerous enemies carry weapons. They don't. Sometimes they carry your last name." The children exchanged nervous glances. This is the story of a young man named Ethan. A story about betrayal, courage, and a grandmother who saw the truth when everyone else chose a lie. I paused for a moment. But before I tell you how his family tried to destroy him, you need to know one thing. If Ethan had arrived at his grandmother's house just 5 minutes later that afternoon, he would never have walked out alive. A cold autumn wind followed Ethan as he pulled into the gravel driveway of the little farmhouse. The smell of fresh bread drifted through the air, bringing back memories of happier days. He grabbed a small bag of groceries and smiled. "Grandma's going to scold me for bringing too much again," he murmured. He knocked gently. The door opened almost at once. But instead of a warm hug, his grandmother's face turned ghostly pale. Her trembling eyes darted toward the driveway behind him. Without saying hello, she seized his wrist. "Inside," she whispered. "Now." Then, in a voice Ethan had never heard before, she said, "They found you." Ethan barely had time to react. His grandmother pulled him into the house, shut the front door, and hurried him toward the old pantry beside the kitchen. "Don't ask questions," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Just trust me." Before he could speak, she pushed him behind the narrow wooden door. The tiny pantry smelled of flour, cinnamon, and old cedar shelves. Glass jars of peaches and homemade jam lined the walls, but Ethan barely noticed them. His heart was pounding too loudly. His grandmother looked him straight in the eyes. "No matter what you hear, don't come out." Then she closed the pantry door. Through a thin crack in the wood, Ethan could still see part of the kitchen. Silence. Then, the distant rumble of an engine broke the stillness. A black pickup truck rolled onto the gravel driveway. His grandmother slowly closed her eyes. She wasn't surprised. She had been expecting them. Heavy footsteps climbed the porch. 1, 2, 3. The front door swung open without a knock. "My dear mother," a familiar voice called, warm enough to fool a stranger. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Ethan's blood ran cold. It was his father. A second pair of footsteps followed. His older brother, Mason. He was carrying a thick brown envelope under one arm. Neither of them looked worried. Neither of them looked confused. They looked prepared. Ethan frowned. This wasn't a family visit. It was a search. His father slowly scanned every corner of the room before smiling. "I know he's here," he said quietly. "And this time, he isn't leaving." Ethan pressed himself against the pantry wall, forcing each breath to stay silent. From the narrow crack in the door, he watched his father stroll into the kitchen as if he owned the house. His grandmother folded her arms. "What do you want?" His father smiled. "Just a conversation." "You've always been a terrible liar," she replied. The smile on his face vanished. "I'll ask you one last time," he said coldly. "Where is Ethan?" "I haven't seen him." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Mason placed the brown envelope on the kitchen table. "We're trying to help him," he said. "If he signs these papers today, this whole mess disappears." His grandmother didn't even look at the envelope. "And if he refuses?" His father leaned closer. "Then, tomorrow morning, the police arrest him." Ethan's stomach twisted. Police? What was his father talking about? He hadn't stolen anything. He hadn't broken any law. So, why did they sound so certain? His grandmother's voice remained calm. "My grandson isn't a criminal." His father let out a quiet laugh. "He will be once everyone believes he is." The words hit Ethan harder than a punch. For the first time in his life, he realized this wasn't about money. It wasn't even about the family business. Someone wanted to destroy his name. Completely. Then his father slowly picked up the envelope and whispered words that made Ethan's blood run cold. "By this time tomorrow, your grandson will have nothing left." The truck finally disappeared down the dusty road. Only then did Ethan step out of the pantry. His face was pale. His hands were trembling. He looked at his grandmother, searching for answers. "What are they talking about?" he whispered. "Why would the police come after me?" His grandmother didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked to the window and watched the truck vanish beyond the maple trees. "I prayed this day would never come," she said softly. "They've been planning this for months." Ethan stared at her. "Planning what?" She turned to face him. "To make you the perfect scapegoat." Ethan shook his head. "That doesn't make any sense. I've done everything for that company. I've worked late, solved problems, even covered for Mason when he made mistakes." "I know," she replied. "And that's exactly why they chose you." She poured 2 cups of tea, though neither of them touched it. "People trust you, Ethan. The employees respect you. If money suddenly disappeared, everyone would believe the honest man had access to it." The realization hit Ethan like a wave. This wasn't an impulsive decision. It was a carefully planned betrayal. His father hadn't come to save the family business. He had come to protect himself. His grandmother reached across the table and gently took his hand. "If you're going to survive what's coming, you need to know the truth about your family." She slowly stood, walked toward her bedroom, and knelt beside an old cedar chest that hadn't been opened in years. From beneath it, she pulled out a small, weathered wooden box wrapped in a faded quilt. When Ethan saw it, he realized his grandmother had been hiding something long before today. Ethan followed his grandmother into the bedroom, his mind racing. She placed the weathered wooden box on the kitchen table with both hands, as though it weighed far more than wood ever could. For a long moment, she simply stared at it. "I've kept this hidden for 15 years, she whispered. "I promised myself it would never be opened." Ethan looked at her in confusion. "Then why now?" A faint, sorrowful smile crossed her face. "Because today, your father crossed a line he can never uncross." She slowly lifted the lid. Inside wasn't money. There wasn't any jewelry. Instead, there were neatly labeled flash drives. Old bank statements tied together with string. Photographs. Printed emails. And a thick bundle of handwritten notes. Ethan picked up one of the folders. Every page carried dates from years ago. Some were signed by his father. Others by Mason. "What is all this?" he asked. "The truth," his grandmother replied quietly. "For years I noticed money disappearing from the company. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. I began making copies of everything before the originals could disappear." Ethan looked at her in disbelief. "You knew all this time?" She nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I didn't collect these papers because I wanted to destroy my own son." She gently placed her hand over Ethan's. "I kept them because I knew that one day, someone innocent would need them." Ethan lowered his eyes to the documents. Then he noticed one sealed envelope lying at the very bottom of the box. Across the front, written in his grandfather's unmistakable handwriting, were 6 chilling words. "Open only after they betray you." Ethan stared at the envelope. His fingers refused to move. The handwriting was unmistakable. It belonged to his grandfather, the man who had built the family business from nothing before passing away nearly 20 years earlier. Across the front, 6 simple words were written in faded black ink. "Open only after they betray you." His grandmother gave a slow nod. "He left it with me the week before he died. He told me never to open it unless the family turned against one of its own." With trembling hands, Ethan carefully broke the old wax seal. Inside was a handwritten letter, a folded document, and a small silver key taped to the corner. Ethan unfolded the letter first. "My dear Ethan, if you're reading this, then my greatest fear has become reality. I always believed that success reveals a person's true character. Sadly, it revealed the worst in your father. One day, he will value power more than family. And when that day comes, he will look for someone else to carry the blame." Ethan stopped reading. His eyes filled with tears. "Grandpa knew." His grandmother quietly nodded. "He saw the greed growing in your father years before anyone else did." Ethan unfolded the second paper. It wasn't another letter. It was a certified ownership agreement. His grandfather had quietly transferred 25% of the company into a protected family trust, with one name listed as its future beneficiary, Ethan Carter. Before either of them could say another word, a loud knock echoed through the farmhouse. 3 sharp knocks. His grandmother looked toward the door, then whispered words that sent another chill through Ethan. "They've come back." The knock came again. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Ethan instinctively reached for the wooden box. His grandmother stopped him. "No. If they're looking for something, they must never find this." She quickly wrapped the box in the faded quilt and slid it beneath the old cedar chest once more. Another knock echoed through the house, this time louder. His grandmother opened the door just enough to see who was outside. It wasn't Ethan's father. It wasn't Mason. A man in a dark gray suit stood on the porch, holding a leather briefcase. "Mrs. Carter?" he asked politely. "My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm an attorney." Her expression didn't change. "What do you want?" He glanced toward the empty driveway before lowering his voice. "I believe your son has been accused of stealing from Carter Industries." She said nothing. Daniel slowly removed a business card from his pocket. "I'm not here on behalf of the company. I'm here because someone asked me to protect Ethan." Ethan stepped out from the hallway. "Who?" Daniel looked directly at him. "An old friend of your grandfather. He spent years waiting for the day someone would ask for help." Daniel opened his briefcase and placed a thick file on the kitchen table. "I've been conducting my own investigation. I think your father framed you." Ethan's heartbeat quickened. Daniel opened the file. Inside were copies of bank transfers, recovered emails, and witness statements from former employees. Then he looked Ethan straight in the eyes. "I believe we can prove you're innocent." He paused. "But once we do, your father won't lose just his reputation. He could lose his freedom." The boardroom fell silent as Ethan stepped inside. For weeks, everyone had believed he had disappeared. Now he stood at the end of the long conference table, calm, composed, and no longer afraid. His father leaned back in his chair with a faint smile. "So," he said, "the thief finally decided to show up." No one laughed. The chairman looked toward Daniel. "Mr. Brooks," he said, "you may begin." Daniel placed a thick file on the table. "We've spent the last 3 weeks conducting an independent investigation into Carter Industries." He opened the first folder. Large bank transfers appeared on the screen. Dates, account numbers, authorization codes. Every transaction had one thing in common. They had all been approved using the CEO's private credentials. There was nowhere left to hide. Then Richard reached into his briefcase one last time. "I have one final piece of evidence." He placed a small flash drive on the table. "Before I resigned, I copied the security footage from the accounting office." Daniel connected it to the screen. The video began to play. The boardroom watched in stunned silence. There, on the screen, Ethan's father unlocked the finance office late at night. Minutes later, Mason entered carrying a folder. Together, they removed company records before replacing them with altered files. No one spoke. The room was filled only with the sound of the recording. When the video ended, Mason buried his face in his hands. Tears filled his eyes. "I never wanted this," he whispered. "I kept telling Dad we should stop." His father turned toward him in disbelief. "Mason, don't say another word." But it was too late. Mason looked up, his voice breaking. "It was never Ethan. It was us." The chairman slowly stood. His expression was colder than anyone had ever seen. Then he spoke the words Ethan had waited months to hear. "Mr. Carter, you're removed as CEO, effective immediately. Security is on its way." No one moved. No one spoke. The only sound in the boardroom was the slow approach of security officers. Ethan's father stood frozen, staring at the faces that had once admired him. Now, they couldn't even look him in the eye. As the officers escorted him toward the door, he stopped in front of Ethan. For a brief moment, it seemed he wanted to apologize. Instead, he simply lowered his head and walked away. Mason remained seated, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I wanted Dad to be proud of me, and somewhere along the way, I forgot how to be a good brother." Ethan looked at him for a long moment. The pain was still there. So was the betrayal. But carrying that pain any longer would only make him another prisoner of the past. "I forgive you," Ethan said quietly. "But forgiveness doesn't erase the choices we make." Mason nodded, unable to speak. Weeks later, the board of directors offered Ethan everything he had once dreamed of. His old position, a higher salary, public recognition, even the role of chief executive officer. The chairman smiled. "Carter Industries needs a man people can trust." Ethan looked out the window before answering. "There was a time when I believed this company was my future." He smiled softly. "Now I know my future isn't waiting inside this building." A month later, Ethan opened a small accounting firm with one simple promise: integrity before profit. People didn't come because of his family name. They came because they trusted his character. On opening day, his grandmother quietly placed the old wooden box on a shelf inside his office. "It belongs here now," she said. Ethan smiled.
No.
"It belongs with the person who saved my life." He gently pushed it back toward her. She wrapped him in a warm hug. "My sweet boy. I didn't save you. You saved yourself the moment you chose the truth over revenge." That evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Ethan locked the office door and stood beside his grandmother. For the first time in months, his heart felt peaceful, because he had learned a lesson no amount of money could ever buy. A lie may steal your reputation for a while, but only the truth can steal your fear. The old woman looked at the children gathered around her rocking chair and smiled. "So remember, my dears, when the world is shouting lies, you don't have to shout louder. Just keep living honestly, because the truth never arrives first, but when it finally does, it never leaves." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who still believes that honesty is always worth fighting for. Until next time, take care, and may the truth always find its way home.